tried to start this company. It failed, and I got so depressed. And this was definitely one of the darkest, most difficult points in my life. So it was clear this company I was trying to start wasn't going to work, and I was so depressed I couldn't even work on it. I just watched Star Trek, and I couldn't get out of bed. It was horrible, and I was out of money. So I'd saved up some money. Instead of paying off my student loan debt, I had saved up some money so I could stop and try to build this thing. And it didn't go well. In my head, I was like, well, I'm good at programming. I can just get another programming job. And this is something I really, really want to talk about, because the sort of prevailing idea in the software industry seems to be that you can just get a programming job. Anyone can just get a programming job. It's easy. Well, I can tell you it wasn't easy. I had years of real professional experience under my belt. I could show people things in my portfolio I had done. But it took, I think, 9 months for me to get a job. And I only got 2 offers in that entire time. And one of them, well, neither of them were very good. So it was horrible. It was one of the most difficult times of my life. I didn't have any money. I took out credit cards. I had lots of I racked up like, I think $40,000 or $50,000 in credit card debt on top of having $40,000 in student loan debt. And I just kept thinking like, well, these people get programming jobs in the Bay Area that pay like $150K a year. I should be able to just do that. Like, I should just be able to pick this stuff up. And I interviewed for these jobs. I had no problem getting interviews. I did so many interviews, 50, 60, like basically any place I ever applied to, they wanted to interview me. And I made it through a lot of the phone screens, most of them, but the in-person ones after that, I never got the position. And thinking back on it, honestly, I just think I was depressed. Like, if somebody was interviewing me, I was probably like the most, like, I don't know, like thinking about interviewing myself at the time. I was like, wow, I can see why nobody wanted to hire me. Like, I was very desperate and very cautious, and I'm not good. So I mentioned this before, but I can't work when people watch me. And I've learned there is a reason for this, and we'll go into this hopefully at some point later on once I discover why that is. But I can't work when people watch me. I just can't. I literally can't. It physically, I'm just like, nope, can't do it. My body shuts down. And so the interview process where everyone wants you to code on a whiteboard, I can't do it. I'd sit there and it's like I scribble some things, but I never do anything useful. And so it was easy to get an interview because people were like, wow, this person has good experience. Look at all this stuff they've done. But then they put me in front of a whiteboard and it was like, wow, they suck. They don't even know how to do anything. So yeah, we already, it's already well established. The whole interview process is horrible. But something I think people don't talk about is it's very discriminatory. It's horribly discriminatory. And, Google and Facebook and stuff have all these things like, oh yeah, we're inclusive, blah, blah, blah. Well, I can tell you what, your interview process and the interview process that you've created for the industry, you guys basically created this way of doing interviews. It is extremely discriminatory. It is not, it is absolutely going to filter out anyone like me who can't work very well when people are watching. And that's not, for the most part, people aren't watching you do your job. So it doesn't mean you can't do a good job, but that's how the interview process goes. And so I was lucky in that the job that I got before this, they didn't make me do that. I don't know why. All we had was like a phone call, and they just asked me some questions that were really basic that I already knew, and they hired me. All these other jobs at this point, every single one of them was like, do these coding exercises, and I couldn't do them. And if I was on my own time in front of my own computer, just doing it myself, I could have whipped it out no problem. But put me in front of someone, I can't do it, right? In fact, the only 2 job offers I got during that period were the 2 companies that didn't make me do that. And so I ended up taking one of them. And this is where I learned about another side of the software industry. I'll say that first job I had was very flexible and accommodating, and I think unusual. I don't think now that I've had a number of jobs and talked to a number of people, I don't think that's normally how it goes. And so I got this job, and it was immediately horrible. It didn't, oh my goodness. So they had a lot of policies and a lot of things that did not work well for me at all. So they were super strict about being there essentially from 8 till 5. I had no flexibility. So even though I was on this medication and it helped, I still had some of these patterns. And it wasn't like they were completely gone. I was more able to do this, but not fully able to. And immediately within 2 weeks, I was already feeling so depressed at this job. A strict 8 to 5 did not work for me at all. It was horrible. It'd be like, I'm not feeling productive right now. Why don't you let me work when I feel productive? What is wrong with you? Why does it matter when I do this? It's not like we had meetings all day or there was literally no reason for this that I can possibly think of, but they seem to really care about, what I call button seat time. They wanted to see you sit in that seat, right? It was horrible. This did not work for me at all. And to make it worse, the first job I was at, it was just salaried, and they never asked you to track your time or what you worked on ever. That worked fine for me in that sense. This one was the opposite. They wanted me to track everything I did, how long it was, and it felt like somebody was watching me. And so I couldn't work. I was like, why? Why does this matter? Just let me get my work done. And I remember even having a conversation with the CTO at this company. Again, it was another small company, but not a startup. They were well established. They'd been in the Bay Area since the early 80s. And I remember they were like, oh yeah, we're profitable. We're not a startup. We're just bootstrapped, profitable. We've been profitable for a lot of years. We're a great work environment, good work-life balance, all this stuff. And I was like, wow, that sounds great, Anyways, I talked to the CTO. I'm like, why the heck are you making me do this? This doesn't work for me. And I was like, do you actually read these numbers? What do you do with this information? And it was very clear that they never actually look at the data, but they were very adamant that we had to record it. And this was totally a deal breaker for me. And the other part of this was they paid terrible. This job, so at my previous job, I started at $75K salary a year, but pretty quickly I moved it up. I think I was making essentially $150K by the time I left, with some stock benefits and stuff. They had gotten acquired. And anyways, this job was $80K, which was dropping back so many years, it felt like. But also living in the Bay Area, it's not a lot. I'm certainly not completely broke or anything. A lot of people make less, but living in the Bay Area is expensive. And this, paying all my expenses while having 75, $100K in debt, I had no money left over. And it took 9 months to even land this job. And so I felt completely trapped. It was so horrible. It was so bad. Every day was such a chore. I hated going to work. The funny thing is, I loved the software. the software I got to work on was so cool. I loved the actual work when I was able to work, which was, I don't know, like 3 hours a week, realistically. I got a lot done and it was great. And I liked the software, but the work environment was terrible and I hated going into work, but I felt completely trapped. Like it was like, well, what am I going to do? Spend another 9 months to find another crappy job? You know? What do you do? I felt trapped. I felt like that's where I was. And so, yeah, it was really hard. And